Hi everyone, my name is Jane Hirschhorn, and I was asked by Ms. Hall to speak to you about the college essay. I am going to talk about a number of topics about the college essay, and then you don't feel like you have to take notes because I have a series of notes from which I am reading, and I will send to you those notes. And there's also some additional resources, so it's all going to be on the document that you'll be receiving from Ms. Hall. Um, so first off, I want to congratulate you for your year is almost over, your junior year. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the summer and ways in which you can think about the college essay and some tips for writing a college essay with relative ease. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what the college essay is. And I'm sure you know by now that it's part of your application. And I think it's really effective if you can think of it as an opportunity for you to tell an admission office about something about that you want to talk about that may not be in any other part of your application, right? Your application is going to capture your grades, it's going to capture your test scores, if you've taken the college boards at this point, and it's going to have teacher recommendations. It's going to have all kinds of information about, where you live and all of that stuff. But really, this is the only place in the application that you get to speak in your own voice. And you get to tell the admission office something about you that might not show up anywhere else. So I hope that you think of it as an opportunity to tell them something about you that you might not see anywhere else in your application. And when you think about writing the essay, I would strongly recommend that you consider telling a story about you that shows a recent moment of growth or maturity. You don't have to tell a story, but I do think it's important that you write about something that is meaningful to you. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what you should write about. So the list of topics in some ways are seemingly endless. You can write about something that you enjoy doing that maybe goes outside of your extracurriculars. Maybe there's something that you enjoy doing like cooking or fishing or playing Monopoly with your aunt, something that you do that you might not be captured on the application. You can write about someone who is important to you in your life. It could be somebody in your family, someone outside of your family. It could be a place that is important to you and reflects your values. It could be something that happened to you that changed you in a small but significant way, whether it was a one-time thing that happened to you or an ongoing experience that you had that's changed you. And it could be an important event in your life or in the history of, beyond just your individual life. But it has to be something that's meaningful and something where you, as the writer, talk about why it is meaningful to you. Ms. Hall also asked me to address some of the things that you shouldn't write about. And I will sort of mention those things, but also explain maybe why you might be able to in a certain way. So conventional wisdom is that you should not write about winning the big game if you're an athlete, or losing the big game also if you're an athlete, or if you've been on a service trip someplace like for volunteer work. And what admission officers say is that those essay topics have been done many, many times, and admission officers have read those types of essays over and over and over again. So I think that if you can avoid those three topics, that can be helpful. However, I will say if you're an athlete, you can write about something that happened to you during a specific game, or a relationship that you had with a coach or a teammate or a fan, or anyone, or an experience that you had maybe in a specific circumstance. Maybe it happened during practice. So those are all things that you can write about, something that happened within the context of playing sports, but isn't about like the topic about winning the big game or losing the big game. Another conventional warning, don't write about these three things, are the three Ds: divorce, death, and disease. However, if you wrote about the divorce of some couple that was, significant to you, whether it was your parents or someone else, you could write about an essay that would be really interesting, that, if your parents got divorced, but maybe you had to take on additional responsibilities, caring for a younger sibling, caring for an elderly relative. Maybe you took on more responsibility around the home, like around, cooking or cleaning, or something that you might not have done had your parents not gotten divorced. That would be a really interesting essay. But as you can see, the essay would focus about how you responded to this event rather than the event itself. within that 3Ds, like if you wrote about somebody close to you who died, right, or who was struggling with, a very significant illness, you could write about how observing a person either getting sick and dying, or somebody who has like a very significant disease, you could write about how what you witnessed made you want to address that disease and some of the conditions surrounding that disease. So, for example, if you had a relative with diabetes and you learned that the risk factors for diabetes are obesity, that you might have gotten really interested in studying how obesity works, or even choosing a career that would mitigate the effects of the conditions that make you obese. That would be a wonderful essay. But the thing would be to focus on not just the person who had the disease or who died, but how you responded to it and how it changed your thinking, your behavior, maybe your decision for your future career. Those would be wonderful, wonderful essay topics. The next question that Ms. Hall wanted me to address would be how you might tie in your first generation story into your college essay. And some of the things that came to mind for me is that the challenges that you faced, and being first gen to college and how you overcame them, and also success stories, what you overcame, how you responded, how you see yourself now, almost, right on the brink of going to college, and how you've changed and how some of the challenges that you faced, how they have turned into successes. So that's a really wonderful opportunity for essay topics. The next thing I'm going to talk about was like how to get started. So in the documents and the resources that I'm going to give you, I would really encourage you to look at the essay prompts. There's 7 of them. And I wouldn't get too concerned about which prompt you decide to respond to. And in fact, number 7, the last one, is choose your own prompt. The admission office is not going to be saying, oh, well, this applicant chose, topic number 1, and we really like to see topic number 3. They really don't get focused on, which topic you choose. The essay prompts are really more an opportunity for you to start thinking in different ways about how you could write the essay. And in terms of other examples or other ways in which you could to start writing, is I would start to think about, like, what are some stories when you think about your life that really stand out? What are some memories that you have of this past year, of the past couple of years? And chances are that if you have a strong memory of an event, something that happened to you, there's probably something that you learned. So I would, get out a piece of paper, get out your laptop, your tablet, and just list some things very strong memories that you have. If you, sometimes it's not easy to actually start to put fingers to keyboard or pen to paper. So there are other ways to generate ideas. So it's kind of like thinking without thinking, right? So like going for a run, if you like to play basketball, to shoot baskets, to go for a walk. One student, I thought this was a great idea, is to look through your playlist, songs that have been really meaningful to you. Because chances are if a song is really meaningful to you, it has some event around it, that maybe you really like this song because something really interesting happened, or it reminds you of a time that was really interesting, or a friend, or an experience. So I would look through your playlist, because there's certainly a wonderful opportunity for you to get topic ideas just from looking through your plays, and of course listening to the songs on them. Other ideas about how to get started without actually starting to write would be to look at different published essays. So I have included in this document published essays from Connecticut College, Johns Hopkins University, and Tufts University. And even if you're not planning to apply to any of those schools, it's still a really good opportunity to see the different types of voices that people have in their essays, and the different type of topics that they wrote about. And also, in addition to, I think, reading some really good writing, you also see what an admission office is looking for. Some other tips that I have for you is to plan ahead. So if you, ideally you're writing this where you're feeling like not rushed and you're not hopefully juggling too many other things, is you should try to set aside about an hour or so a week to work on your essay, whatever part of the writing process you're in, whether it's in the gathering ideas part, or maybe organizing those ideas, starting to write, starting to revise, because I do believe that the revision part of the writing process is really the heart of the writing process. Just sort of set a timer for yourself. Say, I'm going to work on this for about an hour a week, and I would really sort of set aside about 7 weeks or so of which you're working. And the reason why I think it's really good to devote just a very relatively small amount of time is that, you write something or you have some ideas and then you sort of walk away from it and you give it those ideas sort of time to kind of marinate in your brain and sort of to forget about them. So when you come back to them, you can say, maybe this is a really good idea. You might walk away. I know as a writer, sometimes I've walked away from something thinking, oh, this is like so bad. And then I'll come back and I'll say, actually, it isn't so bad. It actually came out pretty well. And of course, other times I've left saying, okay, I've got this all wrapped up. This looks pretty good. And then I come back and I'll say, actually, this does not really sound the way I want it to sound. I need to revise. But having that time in between really allows you to think about and not think about like what's happened and then look at it with a fresh set of eyes. Another question that you might have is that who should help you on the essay? And I do highly recommend that you have at least one person look at your essay before you submit it. And those people could be, it could be somebody that you know very well. It could be a parent. It could be a friend. It could be another family member, a neighbor. And it could be, you could also have somebody look at it who doesn't know you very well and say, well, what do you like, if it's, in the almost done phase, and if you're in the, the drafting phase, does this seem reasonable? Does this seem, I know you don't know me very well, but do you have a greater understanding of me now that you've read this? So you could pick someone you know well, someone you don't know well. My recommendation is to show it to a couple of people, but I wouldn't show it to like 10 people because that just gets to be too overwhelming. And when you show it to people, or if somebody's helping you get started, my recommendation is to see what they have to say and then think about it. You don't necessarily have to take their advice, but if you show it to a couple people and 2 people are saying the same thing, it's probably worth to give those 2 people their advice a little bit more weight, because if 2 people are saying the same thing, then it's probably making that same impression, obviously, on more than one person. But I think it's always good to have feedback because you may be thinking that you're being completely clear and you're not, or you may be feeling that you're saying one thing and they're interpreting something else. And the only way you can get perspective is literally to have someone else look at it and give you some feedback. Another piece of advice I guess I would give you is to think about, as you write this, think of it as a narrative essay. So like to tell a story about yourself and then tell what you learned. And so one of your, the alumni of the TT program, I was looking at their essay and they said, oh, I guess I need to tell a story and a lesson. And I'm like, that's great. That person gave me great language to use because everybody understands story and lesson. So generally I tell students that the story part of your essay is usually at the beginning of the essay, and it comprises around 60-ish%. And then, the lesson part would comprise around 40-ish%. I don't give it an exact amount, but obviously you don't want to have like 90% story and 10% lesson. You want to have some balance. And I do think that the lesson, even though maybe it's not completely lesson at the end, that it still should be like the admission office wants to know, okay, so everybody wants to hear a little bit about the student, but it's like, what did they learn from the story? How is this person able to take their own experiences and make meaning out of it? And the other thing is, there's no absolutely right way to do anything. And so you don't necessarily have to tell a story about yourself. A couple of years ago, I worked with somebody who liked to make things with his hands. And he wrote about, it was something that he did outside of school. And he wrote about what he wanted to make and how he figured out how to make it because he didn't know. And it was a wonderful essay, but it wasn't necessarily a story and a lesson, but it was like the process by which he figures out what he wants to make, how he figures out how to do it, how he makes it, and how he felt afterward making this thing that he didn't really know how to make at the beginning. So my final thought in helping you sort of start to think about the essay and write the essay is that whatever you write about, you should feel really comfortable sharing with an admission office. You don't have to write about the most significant thing that happened to you. If it's too personal or you just don't want to go there, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be, incredibly intimate. But what it should be is something that reveals something about you and something that speaks to your values. In the resources page, I will give you a handout. There's a handout there called the College Essay Guy's Values Exercise. So the College Essay Guy is, as you would imagine, he works on college essay. He's published books. He's a very generous person, and he's created a lot of material. And I really like this values exercise, and I encourage the students that I work with to fill it out. It's really simple. It's basically a list, right? It's a piece of paper, and it's got a list of all these different values, and you can go through and just check values that are meaningful to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to mention that value in your essay, but it is a good way for students to kind of figure out what's really important. What do you value? There's so many values in there, and of course you can write your own, but what's really, really important to you? And chances are, that if you check off, a half a dozen or 12 values, that one of your stories, one of the things that you write about will reflect those values in some way. And it can be really helpful to use that language, the values that you check off, in your essay, if you want to. Finally, I do have a tip sheet. And some of the things that are in my tip sheet have already been in this talk, but even so, it can be helpful, if you listen to this talk and start working on your essay, and then you can come back to the talk, certainly listen to, but also come back to the tip sheet, because sometimes when we hear something and then we go and do something, that piece of advice we may not remember, and then when we're going back and doing some revision, it's like, oh yeah, maybe I should do this. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. In the materials that you'll get, my email address is there. And I wish you all the best, and also continued good health. Take care and good luck.